Hey, everybody, it's Patrick Durkin from the Wellness Enterprise, and we have convened a special group of people the day after Christmas in 2020. And we're going to have a conversation about the sea of consciousness that's available through water and how water can support more of our spiritual selves, our connection to oneness. This is my favorite topic of everything that I do in my business. And it's the thing that makes me happiest and gives me the most satisfaction in my life to feel safe, to feel love, to feel connection. And Elizabeth, who's in one of these boxes here, and she's waving, she's saying hi. She asked me some questions through email the other day, and it's because of her asking the questions that we're having this call. And we're just going to explore what it's like to access consciousness in water and what it's like to feel safety and love and connection. And we're going to see where that conversation takes us. And yeah, I see Paul wishing happy holidays to everyone. This is a really heartfelt community of people. A lot of you I've talked with one-on-one, some of you I've never met before in person, but if you're inspired to connect with anybody else here, I know about you all that you're open human beings, that you're living real beings. You're not what gets depicted in the media. You're not scared of life. And so if you want to connect with somebody here, you can message them on the side, and I'm sure that they'll respond to you and be happy to have a dialogue with you. So please do connect with one another. All right, so I'm gonna ask Elizabeth to unmute herself. And what we're going to do, guys, is we're going to start the conversation really focused on consciousness and water. And then we're going to leave it open toward the end, toward what's going on in the world. I feel really strongly that I can be helpful with what's going on in the world these days. And I'd love to discuss that with anybody that wants to. So feel free, if we move through the water consciousness part and you feel like dropping off the call, no need to say anything, just go ahead and go back about your day. And if you want to stay and join in that second part of the conversation, you're welcome to. I think before I ask Elizabeth a question or engage her, I'm gonna just do one more thing, which is I'm gonna tell a quick story. And the story is, as far as I know, there's probably a bigger one, but as far as I know, nature's biggest water structuring device is Niagara Falls. So I was living in Massachusetts and I was like, hey kids, who wants to go to Niagara Falls for Christmas? And I got 3 out of 4 and that was good enough for me. So we packed the minivan, threw some pillows in the back and hit the road. And we got to Niagara Falls and we stayed there for about 4 days. And each day I would leave the kids and I would go down to the water and I would try to figure out why I was there. And on the 4th, this probably is familiar to some of you who are like, how do I access this consciousness of water? Well, let me share with you that I ask that too. How do I access this consciousness of water? So I go down to the falls on the 4th day and I'm kind of like, so I don't know why I'm here. And I came here because I was supposed to be having some sort of consciousness experience and nothing's happening. And I want to be clear, I'm going home today. So if you got something to say, like today's the day. And so I hear, go for a walk. So off I go, walking past the falls and past all the people. And I get pretty far out and I hear, turn back toward the falls. So, and just hearing something, right? That in and of itself is part of this consciousness. So I turn back toward Niagara Falls and I see this rainbow hitting the top of the falls. And the goosebumps come and it's like, oh, I'm in the right place. Like, hooray, I've been waiting 4 days for this. Like, what's the message? Nothing. I'm like, okay, well, the rainbow's beautiful and I'm happy to be here. So I started walking back toward the falls. And I don't know, maybe there were 1,000 people there. And people tend to congregate in groups of like-minded people. You can kind of tell when you're looking at a family or when you're looking at a school trip or when you're looking at a nationality, everybody's in their small groups. And I noticed that I started like really looking into each group of people. And I started focusing on the faces of these human beings. And I felt love for all of them. Like a love that like brings tears to my eyes. You know, this was like 5 years ago, just to remember that feeling. And the message that I got from standing in the proximity of Niagara Falls, this, you know, maybe the world's biggest water structuring system, is that as that water opens up in that state, that vortex moved state of nature, love is available. Love and harmony are available. And that's what I got. I got love and harmony for people that I ordinarily would not have looked at. I was like, okay, well, the trip to Niagara Falls was meaningful. You know, thanks. I can go home now and understand why I was here. So that love and that feeling are what I can now access pretty much all the time. Not every moment of every day, but really consistently. And that when I ask a question, that I hear that there's an answer, that's there too. And it wasn't always there. And so if it wasn't always there for me, you know, it can easily become there for you. And then the part that I'm most curious about is when we get a whole lot of us living there, what can we do as a species? I don't know, but I want to find out. So, all right, now, Elizabeth, are you prepared to unmute yourself?
Yes.
There she is. Thank you so much for being the inspiration for this call. It was just wonderful to engage with you.
Great.
So I know you were thinking about maybe having some questions coming into this call. Did you come with questions?
Well, I think the one thing that I was curious about was something you just explained in your story, that you know, where does this consciousness come from and for you in terms of feeling that water was a sea of consciousness versus what it was before, or versus, say, a tree or a star. So that was sort of my curiosity, because I'm coming from kind of a different place with that, or a different way of flowing into that viewpoint. So that's what I was curious about.
Yeah. It's a real surprise to have this show up, right? Like, I'm just a regular guy. All I wanted to do was get rid of plastic water bottles. That was it. But the passion with which I wanted to do that, it was unstoppable. It was, I mean, the things that I would put myself through in pursuit of that were unreal. So one of the things that I put myself to is I went to workshops with Hope Fitzgerald. If you all aren't familiar with her website is we-infinity.com, and she's one of my profound teachers about the energy of water. And I went to a workshop working with Hope in the Infinity Wave, which is an energetic tool, and she gave me a homework assignment. And the homework assignment was that when I got home, I was to engage with water when I was in turmoil. So one day I was in kind of a funk, and I was like, oh, Hope said engage with water. So I lived about 75 yards from the ocean. So I just walked down to the ocean, and I had this question on my mind, and I was like, you know, hands are down, shoulders are rolled in, you know, I get in grumpy moods too. And I'm rolling along down the beach, and I asked this question, and I was like, okay, water, like, if we're going to have a dialogue, then answer this. And I look out to the ocean, and I see a wave break on the right and on the left, and the break meets in the middle. And instantly I heard, choose the middle ground on this question. It's not a either or, it's the middle ground. And that made sense. And it like just, you know, it clicked right into place. And I was like, oh, I got an answer to my question, and I got game on with a dialogue with water. What a surprise. Show of hands from the people that we can see. How many people have immersed themselves in a waterfall?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody want to share any kind of experience that has happened for them when immersing in a waterfall? Has anything Did you just get wet, or did anybody else have anything happen like I've had happen where, moods change and things happen? Does anybody want to share? Raise your hand if you want to share. Paul, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many wonderful experiences with water. It's my great teacher. It's my being. But under waterfall, I was doing a Korean qigong practice that my wife was doing, and I wasn't particularly drawn to it. And they do these special practices where they'd have to, like in the wintertime, cut a hole in the ice and sit in the water up to their chin until they could get warm. And I wasn't into that kind of thing, but we went to this retreat in Connecticut, and there was this waterfall, and we had to go stand in the waterfall and practice this breathing. And I don't know, I got moved into a place inside my being that I had never been to before. And what came to me, and it's interesting how this has happened twice in my life now, where I was given a name, and this was my Native American name. And just out of the blue, it just came to me. It was like this gift from water, which was part of a number of experiences I've had, like you in the falls, that have guided me in the flow of my life that have been profound. So that was really nice.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I had a moment like that. I went to Maui in March, and I was really stressed out. The pandemic, travel, my personal life, just everything that was going on. It was like the fourth day in Maui, and I was still cranky. And I went up into the Iao Valley and went into the water, and that was it. Like the mood was over. It was like I was restored back into connectedness, safety. It's a warm feeling. I don't know the exact words for it. I mean, I call it love, safety, connectedness, oneness, but it's like a warmth. And I just feel safe, and from that place, it's like all the fear of life and decisions and, all the stresses we make up, it drops away. And I think that's available to us all the time, right? Like it's available to us daily. Like Maui's the place where when I go in the waterfall, it takes me up, it lifts me. It could break something as strong as a 4-day mood, but I can when I'm not in a funk that bad, I can maintain it or even access it just here, just with a structured water device, or even with prayer. Like it isn't all about selling structured water devices, right? It's about connectedness to water, and that can be done with prayer, right? We have somebody here who I think works with the Emoto Foundation, the Hato Lab. I certainly see a beautiful water crystal in the background, what a debt of gratitude we all should have to Dr. Emoto's work to teach us of this connectedness between our words and our thoughts and our moods and our sounds and all this stuff, and water. Like that was one of my first exposures to it. So let me come back around to you, Elizabeth, and see how we're doing. We'll just keep moving the conversation forward. And as we do this, guys, I can keep telling stories, but the most interesting thing for me anyway, I don't know about for the rest of you, is going to be your questions and where you take us. So if you want to be formulating a question, I'm going to make room for you all to ask them soon. But since Elizabeth and I kind of started this up, let's go back to her and see where she is and if she wants to guide the conversation at all.
Well, I was just thinking in terms of my own experiences with water is that I've always needed to be near water. As a kid, I was one of those people who was running around barefoot, carrying box turtles around and, had my feet in the creek and climbing trees and always had to be outside until I was made to come in, and living on lakes or near lakes and rivers. And just having that is what made me feel whole. So this idea of water as a sea of consciousness was sort of like placing words to an experience. So I appreciated that. And having read Pollock's work and, Moto and all of that, I understand that idea of water and what it provides for us internally in that way, and what the awareness of drinking water and being around water or anything else is going to affect us. And, they say in experiments that the observer changes the experiment itself. And so in a way, though, that's our, true self giving us that opportunity to create whatever life it is that we want. And I live on a piece like 12 and a half acres and have a pond and a creek bed. And this last year I injured my shoulder really badly, and ended up having to have surgery and had 3 different things wrong with it. And just before the surgery, because of COVID, I couldn't have it for 4 months. And a friend of mine who's a Qigong healer had said, I'll send you some healing in about 15 minutes. And I was in so much pain, I just ran out to this little waterfall. And I found myself just moving like this. My whole body was just, I just allowed it to flow. And when he called me, he said, the vision I have for you is run to the water, Elizabeth, run to the water. And I told him what happened. And that kind of became what I was doing, even when I was in a brace for 2 months and couldn't move, and 6 months of rehab, is becoming the water, seeing myself as just an entity of flow. So it just really moved me when I saw that video that you put out, because it was placing words to something that I hadn't really thought of. And because a lot of times I don't think of things in terms of words. For me, it's more of a feeling. And being a kinesthetic person, it becomes a movement, especially as a Qigong teacher and practitioner. So I just love what you had to say about that.
There was a request in the chat that I put any links that I reference in there. And so if anybody wants to find their way to the infinity wave, I took care of that while you were sharing it. And thank you for that. So 2 places I want to go with what you said. One is toward Qigong, and the other is toward the observer. So Qigong first, I think there's a connectedness between flow with hands, flow like a Qigong-y type movement, and the energy of water. It may be that, what I'm getting goosebumps and like energy in my body. It tells me like, yeah, like it's like we're organizing the water when we're doing Qigong. We're bringing order and calm to it. It's a way of structuring water. I think that there are plenty of Qigong practitioners who would say that they structure water with their practice. And so I just want to articulate that point, that at least that's my point of view. And I think it would be echoed. I see some heads nodding and people that may have more to say about it. Does anybody want to say more about that, about the connection between Qigong and structuring water? Yeah, Judy, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Qigong and water, because I do Qigong almost every day, if I can, and we have a nice teacher. And with Zoom classes, it's really wonderful now. But yeah, the movement of the energy of the Qi, and it's all energy, water or just the Qi energy. So I have made that connection myself. So it's really nice to hear it here. So yeah, and it's all energy. The other thing I want to say about water, well, I live in San Francisco, so of course there's water all around, and I can feel that in the air. I live about, 8 blocks from the bay. But I have a garden, blessed with a garden, and it rained yesterday. And usually I go, oh, rain. But I've really learned to appreciate the rain and the water. And you were talking about being in a mood and getting to the water to change it. Whenever I go out into the garden, I mean, within not very long at all, I can really feel that the whole change that overcomes you from whatever, if there's whatever mood there is, to peace. And so I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a time when we need hope. We need leadership, and we need inspiration. We need direction. And one of my hopes is that more of us become more aware of our energetic selves, and we become more aware of our connectedness. Like I think we're starting to hear in Judy's visits to her gardens and Elizabeth's childhood and Paul's experiences at a workshop, that when people go into nature, this connectedness happens. Having a funny debate in my mind here. I've tried to tell a story on video before, and I've tried it twice, and both times the video crashed. So I'm wondering whether this is going to crash our video. But so what happened was, I went to Colombia in South America, and I visited Jen. Many of you know Jen works with us at the Wellness Enterprise. And we went to this place called Caño Cristales. We got on a little plane and we went kind of pretty far out, and we weren't allowed to go into the waterfalls because there was, I don't think it was a drought, but water levels were really low. And so we spent these couple of days around this water, and we weren't allowed to go in, which was really upsetting to me. I really like to play in water and nature. And we went kind of downstream a ways hiking, and we found this, it was, I guess, a little river. It was only about 10 feet wide, and it looked a little bit like when you have a train that goes underground, like the tube that it goes into when the train disappears. It looked like that. And I was with like, I don't know, 10 Spanish speaking people, and then me with my Spanglish. And we got to this water, and I was like, bye everybody. And I just went in the water, and I just started going, and I disappeared out of view. And I got to this is so amazing. I can't believe I get to finally tell this story to people. I've only been able to do it one-on-one before. And I got pretty far down this tube, and the bottom, it was only about 3 feet deep. It was like waist high. The bottom turned a green that I can just best describe as like alien green. I mean, it was just not a color you expect to see on Earth. And I was like, okay, this is the place. And so I stopped, and I relaxed, and I turned my attention toward the bushes and the trees that were there, and I started talking to them. And it was outrageous, you guys. I would ask a question, and these bushes would swing. There's no wind. And these bushes are swinging like this. I'm like, oh my God. And we had a full-on dialogue. I don't remember all the subtleties of it. It was 2016. But Jen started yelling for me. It was like time to get going. And I was like, no, come here. I'm like, you have to come here. And so Jen came walking down through this water, and I was like, come right here. I like moved my feet. I was like, put one foot there and put the other foot there, and I'm gonna stand behind you. And so then I asked a question of the brush again. Nothing. it's totally silent. And I was like, And I asked something else, and Jen says, Patrick, look at my leg. Jen's leg was in massive pain, and she'd been going through a healing crisis. And it was between the knee and the hip on the left leg. And there are these little fish in the water nibbling on her leg, only there, only between her knee and her hip on her left leg. And so we had this experience of communing in nature, of nature being so alive that, you just feel like little fish are bringing healing, and they did. And we got back to Jen's place, and we sat down on the edge of her bed in front of a Mac, just like I'm in front of right now. And we recorded every word of the story. And it was like a 10-minute and 30-second video. And then we went to listen to it, and it was gone. It was there and then it was gone. And then a second time I did a live audio call and I told this story, but I had much more detail back then. And somehow, just as I started telling the story, everybody out, I don't know what to say. Nobody could hear me. I did a soliloquy for 35 minutes and nobody heard a word of what I said. And I was like, okay, like it's not time, right? It's not time for humans to hear this. And I see by your smiling faces that you're hearing me. So this is good news. So I think part of the reason we come together as a community around water is that we need hope in today's world. And I think the hope is that each one of you is a part of a jigsaw puzzle. And when you have the courage to be who you're here to be, and I have the courage, and lots of other people have the courage, we will lead out of what we're going through right now. A new reality emerges on the shoulders of those of us who are willing to dare to say, I commune with nature and it talks back. I need healing on my leg and little fishies come along. You know, I hydrate my body because I'm in a physical world and I want to take care of myself, but that's nothing like the emotional and spiritual benefits that I get from being around living water. That's my hope and my dream. And you know, it's really what fuels me right now. I've kind of lost interest in running a business and making money. Like I just don't care, because running a business and making money don't scale to solving the problems I see our species facing. It just doesn't get there. But having conversations like this that support others to dare to be their fringiest self, that self that there isn't a lot of agreement about, is certainly not, if you look at the media. If I can encourage any one person to become more of who they authentically are, that person might have the idea, the key, or the something that changes things for a whole lot of people. So that's my motivation these days. Okay, so you know, this is a free-floating conversation, and I'm in a pause moment. So does somebody want to direct it? Yeah. Hi, Niedra, please help out.
Well, you know, I love this conversation, and the only I love what I think it was Paul who was talking about the waterfall. You were asking about the waterfall, and the thing is that sometimes we don't have access to going to Colombia and being in the middle of the rainforest or but nature is everywhere all the time. And I will just share, let's say I'm a big nature person, but I don't always have the direct access. Where I live, there's a swimming pool filled with chlorine. And I remember debating, do I want to expose myself to the negativity of all these civilized influences on nature? And I figured out that for me to get into that freezing cold water that nobody would go into with the chlorine did so much good and grounded me and made me so capable of dealing with my husband was dying at the time. He was very ill, and doing that kept me so much more connected, and that I could really act from a very high place and stay very, very present, because sometimes in life we have to be present with a lot of complexity. So I would say, you know, I'm thinking to myself, well, I'm not a Qigong master, but I honor water. I mean, every time I fill my little kettle up, I'm saying thank you to my filtered water for being willing to hydrate me. So I think it's everywhere. You can be in front of your computer communing with nature. It's an awareness of not being so solid. I don't have another way of putting it. So I love the conversation. I just wanted to share that it's very interesting for me to listen and to say that it's always there for all of us. It's always there for all of us to tap into dissolving some rigid aspect of who we are and open to who we really are, which is who we are not, we don't think we are. I don't have another way of putting it. That's
Neudra,
about.
that's so good. Thank you for opening that up. This is one of my most important things to communicate to you guys. When I look at all of you, I see water putting on a face. There's the face of Brandon that water has put on. And in the face of Brandon, water has influenced me. It puts on the face of Paul. Paul has influenced me too. These people show up, we get in conversations, and I listen like everyone, the ones that come in for hugs and the ones that come in with daggers. I listen like everyone is water giving me a gift. And I think one of the ways I got to this is I was sitting in Hull, Massachusetts at my place overlooking the ocean for 10 years. And I was kind of thinking about how humanity was just running into itself and toxifying itself and really making a mess of things. And I thought to myself, if we stopped, if humans stopped right now, like we're all just dead, how long would it take water to reclaim the horrors that we've left on the earth? And I was like, in geologic time, a nanosecond. I was like, there's that vine that keeps growing in my yard because I refuse to spray pesticides. And everybody hates this vine. I don't know what it is, but it's a little bit like Pachysandra, and it spreads like crazy and it just comes up everywhere. If I didn't get after that, I don't think there's any way the house that I would leave if I died and was no longer on the planet, I don't think it could last more than 5 years until that vine covered the whole house, right? And every one of those leaves is water. And so that water would just wrap that house and the insects would crawl up it, and a nanosecond in geologic time until all the pollution and concentration of man would just disappear. So water's got us handled. Like, no matter how bad we make this, it's gonna clean it up. And apparently we still today have the privilege of playing with each other. Because I see a Zoom room full of people. You know, I see all these faces of water still showing up today. So Neudra, you open up this topic that to me is just, I think it's part of what gives me the greatest comfort in my life, is that I'm really comfortable letting whoever shows up be the way they are, and that they're giving me a message, and whatever in me is reactive, resistant, doesn't like, that's just a place for healing. Water just wants me to heal and be loved completely. And so it sent this person to show me that I can be reactive to a something type of position. And having the confidence that they're all coming in phases of water gives me a little bit of that feeling of safety, that feeling of love, that like life is okay. Like, I don't have to do anything about saving the world. Like, water's got a plan and I'm just a piece. And if I could just courageously be the piece I'm supposed to be, and maybe interact with others who are doing the same, it's all gonna work out. And whether people are ready in this lifetime or not to step into all the greatness of who they can be, that's not a problem. Like, water doesn't seem to be complaining about that. The source of life doesn't seem to be complaining about that. No reason I should. So I don't even know if I'm wholeheartedly being all of the piece that I was destined to be. Probably better I not judge anybody else for how well they are or aren't fulfilling their part. So again, Neudra, this topic, it hits one of my favorite things, because it gives me a feeling of safety and of rightness about life. And that's not an easy thing to have right now, especially if I'm oriented in my day through my eyes outward instead of from my feelings generated from inward. So I love that you opened that up. 1 second, Paul. And then the other thing that I love that you opened up is I have this really unique vantage point. I get to talk to thousands of people like you, and I'm still, as a CEO, like really engaged in this business. So people call and they get me one-on-one, and I learn. And one of the things that we do as humans that I've observed is we allow frailties and we allow obstacles to occur like they're real. So in your case, the chlorine in the pool, that will stop a lot of people. And what I'd like to share is that, and this ties back to a point I wanted to make about what you shared, Elizabeth, about the observer changes the experiment. Well, what if you just go at each situation like, I'm an infinite being and everything's working out for my benefit, and this is a benevolent universe, and you know, all I have to do is show up from that perspective and then watch. And what I can't explain it, right? I get my first structured water device, the water's coming out of the shower, and I call Clayton Nolte up and I'm like, hey, your device doesn't work. I still smell chlorine. What's the matter with you and your water thing? You know? Now I get that call all the time, right? And he explains, he says, well, you still don't get it, Patrick. So let's go through it again. So we go through the conversation and I learn about the physics again and about the chemistry again, and that it's being transformed. And even if there is chlorine there, it's not harmful to me. It's like, oh, my mind's wrestling with that. And then I come to peace about it somehow. I don't really even know how this happens, but the experience of that water coming out of the shower is the chlorine is gone from my existence. It just is. It's gone. I'm not like, oh, I smell it and then it goes away. It's like, it's gone. And then I get moments, I've been on this journey with structured water about 8 years. I get moments where I get a whiff of it, it comes back. And I'm like, oh, what are you testing? You know? And it's like, if I can keep my eye on, I'm an infinite being and I'm hanging out with water, we're the ones that are creating this reality together. It's a reality, a benevolent reality of love. It disappears again, and I'm bigger than that challenge. I'm bigger than the chlorine in the swimming pool, or I'm bigger than any toxin or any energetic experience. Thanks for your patience, Paul. Please go ahead. You're muted.
There we go. I found it.
Hi.
Yeah, brilliantly spoken, Patrick. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to stay too much longer, but I just love you and your work, and I wanted to be here in this flow with all of you. But I did want to share a story that seems to resonate with what's been shared here. And it was very personal to me. I was on a journey. I was in India visiting with a teacher there named Papaji or Punjaji in Lucknow. And I remember going there, and it's the last place on earth I ever wanted to go. But I had a couple of dream out-of-body kind of experiences, and something said, you got to go. And I had a good friend of mine that was there, and I said, okay, I'll go. So it's a 6-week program, and at the last week, the last day, it reminds me of your waterfall experience, Patrick. I said, well, I've come all this way, you know, I'm waiting to be enlightened or whatever's supposed to happen. So I just sat and meditated and wrote a note. And the way this thing worked is you can picture this big hall with maybe 400 people. And if you have a question, you can write it on a little scrap of paper and you pass it up, and they put it like in a hat. And then he'll be up there after he does some teaching and meditating, and then he'll reach in and just randomly pull out, you know, a few of these. And if he reads your thing and you want, you can go up and sit kind of in front of him and have this experience. So we're getting near the end of it, and I pass my thing up, and he calls this woman who was sitting right next to me, young woman, probably maybe 20 or early 20s. She was beautiful, all dressed in white. She goes up, sits in front of him, and says, Papaji, what's happening in the world is horrible. These people are being slaughtered in Africa. She said, and she's totally sobbing in tears, just doesn't know what to do. And how can I be with this, all this violence and all this pain and separation in the world? And he just smiled and he looked at her and he said, you know, Jennifer, whatever her name was, there's only one question you have to answer. Who am I? And then take away the who and take away the I. And she just kind of leaned over, smiled, and she was just resting on pillows. So while she's resting on pillows, he says, well, this will be our last one. He pulls this piece of paper. And I said, oh no, it's mine, because he started reading it. And the essence of what I put on that paper was, Papa G, since I was a young boy, the only time that I ever felt at peace and dealing with stress and being okay was when I was in, on, or next to the ocean. I was blessed to grow up in Rhode Island, near Patrick, not too far from Patrick on Narragansett Bay. And I used to go walk down and just be by the ocean or in the ocean. And I was a swimmer my whole life. Being in the water was my one place of coming home. And so he read this and we had some interaction. And then he said, I want to share something with you. He said, you know, if you want, there's a spirit name that we all have. And he said, I have your spirit name and I'd like to give it to you if you like. I said, well, that'd be wonderful. So maybe that's why I came to get this name. And he said, your name is Sagar, Sanskrit. Of course, I didn't know Sanskrit. And he said, let me tell you about Sagar. He said, all of creation comes from water. He said, Sagar is the ocean of creation out of which everything is created. The element water, fire, earth, air, people. And he said, most all of us are like waves in the ocean. We rise out of this oneness and we may be a big ocean wave. We may be a little ripple on a pond. We may be a violent wave. He said, but we are all that water. And he said, your job is to be that ocean of creation. And it changed my life. I mean, I came back and I had to go find a sailboat and head out to the ocean to find out what this is all about. But it's led me to Patrick and it's led me to Structured Water and now to all of you. So we are the ocean of creation and thank you for hosting this. I'm sorry I can't be here longer, but I love you all. Yeah.
Thanks for popping in and sharing with us, Paul, and being
welcome.
an ocean of water with us. Yeah, it's neat to have the privilege of being publicly visible in a business like this, to attract people like Paul, whose lives have been touched by water, and to hear about it, and then to be able to share him with others. And what a gift that is. So Paul's been deeply touched, and you know, it's pretty amazing to start having conversations like this publicly about what feeds our souls and what really makes us feel safe and feel good about ourselves. Because we need more good feelings in this world. Yeah, beautiful share. Thank you for being here, Paul. Okay, still open-ended here. Zane, yeah, I was wondering if Zane was going to talk. Zane knows a lot about gardens and water, and he taught me about fairies and little mystical beings that I was unaware of in my garden, which I'm a little bit more awareness of, Zane. But where do you want to jump into this conversation?
Well, you know, we were talking about water. It all began with the waterfalls and opening up that sea of consciousness exploration. And what happened to me in this summer, I was postponing my interaction with water, like swimming and engaging. I felt like I grew up in the ocean, near the ocean. Most of my time was spent in the ocean. And I was waiting for that time to finally make it back to the ocean. But this summer, just in the depths of quarantine, I was drawn to this waterfall, this secret gorge, and just over the line in Vermont, like 5-minute drive from me. And I never knew existed before. And I discovered it. And I spent almost a daily, like a Qigong practice, going down there and moving through my forms and immersing myself in this flow, like this flow of water going down this, like a little chasm into a pool. And I just immersed myself in that water. And it's like, it came to me like water is liquid wisdom, because what it imparted to me was a connection to nature, like a natural state. And I couldn't have been more tactile in that feeling, through full immersion in this flowing water, clinging onto some stones, just having it wash my my discordance away, or whatever, my tension. It's such a deep level. And so I just wanted to share that experience, because it became a daily, almost a daily experience through the summer till mid-October. I think that's as far as I could take it. But
Sure.
it's just really impressed me that way. And it's, and since, like, my wife died almost, you know, like six years ago, she was Aquarius, a water bearer. It's almost like after she died, in the emptiness of it all, appeared this interest in water, and which led me to you and Holland and all. But it has this like grid work of consciousness, of like direction, if you allow the flow to happen. It's a great teacher. So for me, and how it flows, like Qi is water, you know, this flowing Qi and Qigong, it's a great feeling to apply, and movement. Yeah.
So Zane, one of the things I'm struck with is how fortunate some of us are to live near those type of natural expressions where we can go out and have that experience. And so I'm wondering, you know, how radical does it sound to people who don't have that kind of experience, that it might be time to move? Like, I'm just not sure that living in cities is good for us, and living away from nature. You know, it's like, I gave up my house June 30th. Like, I'm just gonna move where spirit tells me I have to go. So I'm spending a winter in West Texas, you know, unexpected, completely unexpected. But this season will end, and I'll finish the work I'm supposed to do here, and I'm gonna move, you know, to the next place I'm supposed to go. It's really dry here. I'm glad I have structured water devices. But I do think we need to get into nature. I drove to Sedona, Arizona with my boys a couple days after Thanksgiving, so just about a month ago, and we got in at like 1:30 or 2 in the morning, and I woke up kind of early, just didn't sleep as long as I wanted to, and I was like, well, you know, I'm tired. It was a 10-hour car ride. I stayed up too late. I'm waking up, I'm a little groggy. I'm like, today's just gonna be a low energy day. Like, I'm just not gonna be exuberant, so I'm just gonna go easy on myself. You know, kind of a little bit resigned to not feeling that well for the day. And I got outside, and, you know, Sedona is basically crystals under red rocks, right? Or crystals in red rocks. It's just crystals everywhere. And I started just interacting, a couple of phone calls. I got all jazzed up and happy. And I was like, Sedona makes me happy. It just flat out makes me happy. And so there are places like that where nature beckons us and gifts us with that happiness. And sometimes we have to be somewhere else, you know, like, I'm 100% sure that I'm supposed to spend this winter here, and that the land here is so flat and so dry. It's really unbelievable. And this is where I'm supposed to be. So I don't know, maybe more people can move more to nature and have more of the type of experiences that you just had, Zane. But you know, you could probably, Zane, teach people to have those experiences just with a garden anywhere, right? Because of, you know, the way, right? Like, we don't want to make it like you can't get the benefits of engaging in nature just because you live in a certain place, right? Because you can grow a garden, and what kind of experiences can you have in a garden, Zane?
multi-dimension in a garden. It's it's an open book.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Judy, you're growing a garden. Well, you have a little bit of a garden in San Francisco, in the city.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a shade garden, so I really can't grow vegetables or food, but I have trees. I have, it's amazing what I have back here. And I try to invite people over. Well, COVID kind of stopped it, but a few people came over one at a time because they know that it's special and they know they feel better when they're in that. Yeah, I'm blessed, really, really blessed. I always say that, God knew if you wanted me to be in San Francisco, you'd have to give me something like this, because I really don't think I could live if I was in just an apartment without being able to go out I go out a window into some land, into some nature.
Yeah. So I guess what's coming to me is, no matter where anybody is who's on this call or who listens to it later, there's always something you can do. So I first got plants about 10 years ago, and I had a plant that was 7 years old, and every year or two I would cut it down so it was just this tall, and it would regrow because I got tired of looking at the brown leaves. And it was about 3 or 4 feet tall. And my friend Marianne came over, and I said, and she's got a really green thumb, and I was like, Marianne, that plant looks so miserable under my care. Like, I think we need to put it out of its misery. It's always got brown leaves, and I know it's on me, but I can't seem to get it right. And she said, okay, Patrick, well, take it out of that nice pot and put it in a plastic pot when you have a chance. And next time I'm over, I'll scoop it up and I'll take it to the dump, and there's a swap area, and I'll put it out and somebody will adopt it, and it'll be much happier. Well, as good as I am at neglecting that plant, I forgot to do that too. And so the plant, it heard the conversation, because even though I neglected it and gave it no attention, it grew its first flowers in 7 or 8 years. And that's when I got like, wow, you're alive, you hear me, you're on my team, like we're in this together. And it was the only season I got flowers out of that plant. It was really amazing. But the point is, no matter where you are or how much of a city you're concentrated into or how much of nature you can't touch, you can get a plant. And in that interaction, you can have something happen. And you can go to a public swimming pool and take a structured water device into that pool and structure that water, right? We have reports from our friend Kiko in Maui who says, 75-yard long pool, and she's structuring a little bit of water with her structuring device and experiencing, my hands don't get dry anymore. My skin's not dry. Like, that water transformed. So let's be mindful of that. There's always an opportunity where we are with the face of water that's here, that we can do something. I noticed my first weeks in West Texas that my hands got dry pretty often. And I was like, well, how am I going to work through this? It turns out that my regenerative agriculture friend had purchased 2 pallets of ingredients for his land that he didn't end up using. And it turns out that they are Epsom salts in the agricultural form. And so I have a 50-pound bag in the garage of magnesium something, I forget but it's Epsom salts. And so I take Epsom salt baths with like 8 cups of Epsom salts, and it's a reset for me if I get dried out at all. So that's one of the ways that I'm dealing with it. If anybody else is sharing at any point in the rest of the call and they have a suggestion that they just want to do a quick shout out about the way they find nature where they are, I think that that's something that we can do that's really helpful to people. Great, Elizabeth, I wanted to circle back with you and see how you're doing. So yes.
About 8 years ago, I started training as a volunteer naturalist at a 26,000 acre research forest that we have near us. And, they're training you to teach about the birds and, I can tell you about the flora and the fauna and blah, blah, blah. But the logo there is to connect people with nature. And one day the big CEO came in, this is great. We're glad you're volunteers and you got to connect people with nature. Does anybody have anything to say? And I just said, we are nature. And he goes, yeah, you gotta get those people connected and we'll get them memberships and all this stuff. And after that, I just thought, wow, that was my focus, is that we are nature, and that I wanted people to come there. And yes, it's a beautiful place, and to show them what was there and available, but to let them know that if you're coming from, if you're a school group from inner city and you're there and you're dazed and confused and saying, this is great, to just say, before you go to bed at night, just look at the stars. You might not see them really well because you live in the middle of the city, or, when you wake up in the morning, just go outside for a minute and stand there and be still and feel the dew on your skin. Or is it, what's the moisture content? What is it, cool? Is it whatever? And to be able to just know that our bodies are nature. And then my whole feeling after that, being there and having people come to me and ask questions, it's like, we're two pieces of nature connecting, just as we are in this moment. We're all just, little drops in the ocean connecting into this one glass to be here. And that everything, like this glass of water, it carries, it's matter, it's chi or energy, and it's information. And we're giving that information to our bodies of healing and consciousness. But, that ultimate information, as you've said, is love and the interconnectedness of everything. So, here we are the universe. This is the universe. And how do we interweave all of that is coming together in the beauty of things like this. And I always like to read the Tao Te Ching. That's kind of my thing. I have like a zillion different versions. And it was interesting because I just sort of opened something up this morning and I thought, okay, this is the Sea of Consciousness data with Patrick. What are you going to bring me today? And I had to write it down because it was about water. And it said, the softest thing in the world overcomes the hardest thing in the world. Mm. And water can come crashing down on us, and it can shape rocks. It can, soothe and clean a little baby. It can hydrate us. It can make us feel wonderful, standing under a waterfall. But also the softest and hardest, if we think of that, our ego, and what is the softness that's going to change that? It's our awareness and our consciousness and our love and our connection to one another. So I love the analogies of water. I love the idea of flow, going with the flow. And if there's a rock, the water goes around it, it'll pound and pound into that rock. But, I'm going to use my little rudder and get around that rock. So I really thank you for this, this day and this sharing and coming together like this. All because, I met you through a little water structured unit that I heard about through my Qigong friend Zane, and it just sort of ripples and one flows into the next, and it's the beauty of our lives. So thank you.
So well said. So many really beautiful points. I think that last point that you made about, a little structured water device leads us all connected here. I want to do everything I can to heighten our listening for all the faces of water and how supportive it is. It shows up in so many ways, trying to get our attention. I was driving home from yoga one day, and this red-tailed hawk, which is an animal totem that's near and dear to my heart often, it kind of buzzed across my car. And I was like, oh, when I get home, got to look up red-tailed hawk again. and I didn't. And about 3 or 4 days later, my door was open to the outside. My son was out in the yard. He's like, "Hey, Dad, you hear that hawk screaming?" And I was like, "Oh, I hadn't noticed." I was like, "Oh, gotta look up red-tailed hawk again." And then I didn't. And then like a couple days later at 8:15 in the morning, I hear this crashing in the holly bush outside. And this red-tailed hawk is like hurting itself in this holly bush. And I'm like, "Don't hurt yourself. I'll look it up. I'm sorry." Right? So usually the way those things go is like, we get a sign and we don't listen. And then it's more intense on us. But I was being gifted that the animal was actually going to hurt itself rather than hurting me. Right? And it's like in around that time in my life, I kind of changed my relationship with the messaging that comes. And I was like, "Listen, you don't have to hurt me anymore. Like, if I miss it on the first subtle one, you could just give me one more subtle one and I promise I'll get it. Like, you can go easy on the hawk and you can go easy on Patrick now." And so I have a much gentler life now. Like, I used to like really bang around and bruise myself a lot. And I'm more coddled and supported now. It's a more gentle experience. So I want to heighten that listening in all of us. It's like, what if you didn't resist anything that came your way? What if everything was embraced as, that's water, and if I'm offended about what it's showing me, it's because it wants me to be more loving. It's just trying to pop out something that's stuck in me that's not yet loving enough. What if? It's a place to explore. I certainly continue to push myself in that direction, with really just not resisting anything. So I invite you all to do the same. But I really love everything you just shared, Elizabeth. And I think I want to make space now for a question that might be out of left field or not like following the trail that we're on, because I want to kind of move now into current events and just share a little bit about what I'm doing to try and make the world a better place, like boots on the ground, making things happen in my life. But before we get there, I want to make sure that we fulfill this topic as a community. So does anybody have another place on the topic we've done? Sherry Lou does. Hi, Sherry Lou.
Hi, Patrick. I finally got on, honey. I didn't get on at the right time. But I just wanted to take a couple moments and say that I'm really happy that I did check email and that I got on. And I'm grateful for that, because I am very grateful for all that you've done for me in my life to help me with the structured water. It's amazing, and I am so blessed and so grateful. And I do love water so much, and I find that my peace comes when I go sit by the water. And I'm so grateful I live here in the Florida Keys, so I can get by the water very easily, and it's beautiful. I grew up here, and for a long time I was living in the woods up in North Florida, and I love the woods. I do miss the woods, but I'm also grateful that I'm back here because of the water. There's more, there's water up there too, but this way I can just like walk down and be right there on the water, either the ocean or the bay. So I'm very grateful. And I just wanted to take a moment to say that I love all that you're doing, and I'm very grateful that I found you. So I just wanted to thank you, and that's all.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be able to have the type of dialogues that we have. So hearing this share, I want to encourage people who are more city bound or less immersed in water. When you plan your vacations and your time away and your business trips and your activities for the future in your life, plan them around trips. My story at the beginning about going to Niagara Falls, it's because I planned a life around water. That's why Niagara Falls becomes a destination for me. So how can you make water like some of us gets to live next to every day? How can you make that more of a destination for you?